validating the top 10 quarterback rankings after week 6 of college football? Did Cam Ward do enough with his late game heroics versus Cal to stay at the top? And is there a new tiger amongst the group? We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everyday. So you know I got to keep the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content each and every single day, man. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated. Today, Week 6 recap. We're doing our classic quarterback rankings. Then we're going to move on to money makers and bag fumblers, and we're going to wrap this thing up with game ball. DP, we had some really good quarterback performances, man, this week, so you know I'm ready to get into the conversation. Let's get into it.
LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Terms and conditions apply. Guys, you already know what time it is. If you're new here, we break down and rank the top 10 quarterbacks each and every week as they play. Number 1, still holding strong, Cam Ward out of Miami. At number 2, Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. At number 3, Jalen Milroe from Alabama. At number 4, Carson Beck from Georgia. At number 5, Quinn Ewers from Texas. Number 6, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. At number 7, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. At number 8, Curtis Rourke from Indiana. At number 9, Drew Aller from Penn State. And at number 10, your boy, Keith, out of Clemson, Cade Klubnik, man. So, Keith, when you look at this list, and as we talk about this list, where do you want to start here?
Yeah, I want to start with, let's go Carson Beck, DP. And I know that's not the most popular name, but I'm going to say Carson Beck because this is the bounce back. I guess you kind of say it was a bounce back performance. I believe I seen a stat where I think he was perfect throwing a football under 15 yards, right? He might have been like 12 for 12 for passes that was under 15 yards. And looking at it, and it's like, well, is that what Carson Beck is, right? Like your short to intermediate thrower, right? And then it's like, okay, cool. Do you project that, like you said, like, is that no longer the QB1 conversation, right? And you're probably more, like you said, the second round, middle second round, third round pick versus, hey, this guy has the upside to be a first round pick and the top of a draft class, right? And so that's why I said with the Carson Beck, I think that he's probably carving out his own kind of arena, right? An area where he's probably going to live at, like by himself, right? Like, there's no need to force it. He's showing us kind of who he is.
Yeah, I think with Beck, man, you know, like you said, it was somewhat of a bounce back, right? You look at the stats and what he put on, you know, in the box score, 23 of 29, 240 yards, 8.3 yards per attempt, and 2 passing touchdowns with a QBR of 89, right? Like, he played good football. He was the point guard. He distributed it. He got it to his teammates and to his receivers. But the big thing for me, Keith, with him, and I wrote it in my scouting write-up over at Bleacher Report, he is a more mobile Jared Goff. And Jared Goff at his best is when he has a run game, that play action. Like, Carson Beck loves to throw between the numbers. He loves to attack the middle of the field. He loves to attack the short to intermediate. If he can get the deep ball, and I think with Carson Beck, his deep ball is his creating explosive plays. It's not that he can't do it. It's more so the vertical, just go ball, right? Can you throw it out in front of a guy that has a guy stacked by maybe a step? Can you really put it out there where he can run under it and put it on the line, right? It's not always going to be like that rainbow-esque type of trajectory. I don't think he has the requisite arm talent for that, but I think he can create the horizontal explosives, the deep overs, the deep crossers, the deep in cuts, right? Like, he's the type of guy that if he's facing zone defenses, I feel comfortable with Carson Beck under center, and with a lot of teams in the NFL playing zone. Yeah, like so you look at what like Jared Goff has done in his career. He's been with Sean McVay, and when they went to the Super Bowl, they had a run game. If I remember correctly, they had a run game. Yeah, Todd Gurley.
Yeah, Todd Gurley.
Yeah,
had a really good run game with a really good
run game. You know what I mean? So you had Todd Gurley. Now you look at him now in Detroit, where people thought, oh yeah, the Detroit Lions clearly lost this trade. And it's like, no, the Rams won it because they won the Super Bowl with Stafford, but the Lions still ended up paying him and giving him another deal because he runs this offense for Ben Johnson. They got our two-headed running attack with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you give him the requisite weapons and just let him literally play point guard and not tell him to, hey, put the entire offense on your back. I think that's where when people said, listen, Carson Beck is QB1, when I think of QB1, I think of what I see from Cam Ward, what I've seen from Shedeur Sanders, and what we saw last week, especially from Jalen Milroe, a guy that when everything else isn't operating at his highest clip, can you carry some of the load, or carry more of the load on your back? And I think that's where Carson Beck, for me, like you said, like I still have him as a first round prospect. And it's because of some effect of, hey, that Jared Goff was like, what, number one? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Jared, I think he was 101. Yep.
He went 101. And I remember that draft, it was him and Carson Wentz. I actually had Carson Wentz as my QB1. I was like, man, mobility, the arm talent. He was exciting. He's a lot of fun to watch. And we saw that year before the year that he was really on path to win MVP.
He was on an MVP scale. Like, it was crazy.
Like, shit. And then the ACL tear happened, and it was just like everything went downhill after that, right? But I remember watching Jared Goff, and I was like, I see the appeal. I was like, I don't know if I see the appeal at 101. Now, granted, Jared Goff has had a great career so far, a really good career, Super Bowl appearance, things like that. So when I look at him, man, I think the way he's played, the way his career has panned out, yeah, for teams that are building a nucleus and not saying, hey, I think me and you've talked about this since we took it over this pod last February. Teams need to focus on building the actual team, then drop the quarterback in. Let's stop dropping the quarterback and say, let's build everything else around. No, let's
getting mad when the quarterback is not playing well.
Yes,
well, I think that's some of the biggest, that's like, I guess, like false narratives, right, in the NFL is that the quarterback is going to carry the entire team. It's like that's not true, right? We've seen I
blame Pat Mahomes, Keith.
It's definitely the Pat Mahomes and Tom Brady effect, right? To where those guys are so great that they carry certain elements of a team. But when you actually break down even those teams, there are good defensive performances throughout Tom Brady's career. There are good defensive performances throughout Patrick Mahomes' career, right? And we've also seen both of those guys play bad football. Remember when Tom Brady looked really bad, I think, at his very last game with the Patriots, maybe when they played the Titans, and I think the Titans blew him out, right?
At the end of the game in the playoffs,
We've seen Patrick Mahomes look really bad in the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Bucks, right? And they had to revamp. He hasn't
looked great to start this season.
Yeah, he had to revamp the entire offensive line, right, to get him back on par. So I think that you're right that those type of quarterbacks is about fit. And I always go with Derek Carr for Carson Beck, but I understand the Jared Goff conversation too, because I think both of those guys are kind of in the same spot, right? Like, you get good, you could get really good, you could get bad, you could get really bad. It's, hey, what's around them, right? And
just don't put too much on them.
Yeah, don't put too much on them. I agree 100%. With DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man, because we have coming up next the money makers and bag fumblers. Yes, which draft prospects made themselves money and which draft prospects dropped a couple dollars.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedon NFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Halloween lets us have fun with the things that scare us, right? But what about those fears that don't involve zombies or ghosts? We all have fears, guys. I go to therapy once, maybe twice a month to reset my mental. If I'm anxious about something or I have my own self fears that I'm dealing with, I can sit down with someone that's unbiased and objective that can help me overcome that. Especially, you think some people fear success. Some people fear not being successful, whatever it is. Guys, I'm telling you, therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding the ways to overcome them so you can be the best version of yourself. I can tell you from personal experience. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Money makers and bag fumblers, aka stock up, stock down. For those who are new to the pod, Keith, I gotta go to Syracuse, and you know me. I've been pounding the table for this tight end class like all season, and they haven't disappointed me yet, Keith. And like Oronde Gadsden, the way he performed against who was it? I think it was UNLV in a shootout game Friday night, 44-41 overtime game. And him and Kyle McCord, and this was big because the first 2 weeks, like Oronde had 13 catches, 3 touchdowns accounted for, and over 200 yards. Then he went 2 back-to-back games with just 3 receptions for 16 total yards. So against UNLV in the game where you had no choice but to score points, 10 catches, 142 yards, 14.2 yards per catch. He was in a rhythm. And he was the go-to guy for Kyle McCord in that game, where they ended up squeaking out a 3-point victory in overtime. Man, just, again, another name in such a stacked like tight end group. You think about Bryson Nesbitt at North Carolina, of course, Colston Loveland at Michigan. My guy, Harold Fanning Jr., who is risen, is a cream rises to the top. Like, he is risen to the top of the tight end group. Tyler Warren over at Penn State, to see Oronde Gadsden putting up this type of performance, man, I kept saying it. He reminds me a lot of Darren Waller. And when you see him lined out wide and in the slot, you see him, stretch vertical, gear up and get up the top speed. This young man is a playmaker, big time playmaker. I think he's like listed at 6'5", 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 6'5", 235. Like, the end of the day, like if you're a team, I mean, heck, you think about, teams like, the Detroit Lions, we just talked about with Jared Goff and that comparison to Carson Beck. Like, they have all these smaller receivers, J-Mo, Amari St. Brown, stuff like that. And he's like, well, you have a tight end in Sam Laporta, but you could draft a Oronde Gadsden in the second round and use him as a big pseudo wide receiver, the same way that teams ended up using Darren Waller.
DP, I want to ask you, how does he compare to I'm not remembering this guy's name. I feel like you're going to remember him. He played with Detroit, and then he signed a big contract with the Giants, and he was another big-bodied wide receiver. And then everything just kind of went down. Kenny Golladay. How does he compare to Kenny Golladay, if he compares to Kenny Golladay at all?
Similar. Kenny Golladay, truthfully, was never like, he was kind of a receiver in a tight end body in a sense. Big, physical, 50-50 catch ball guy, would win at the catch point, but he didn't separate a lot. Wasn't the greatest athlete, in terms of vertical speed and everything. He was more of a back shoulder fade, deep crosser, deep post type of guy, so he can put that back, put his back to the DB. He compares fairly well, to where it's like, what would Kenny Golladay have actually looked like if he played tight end, or if he made like, that transition to playing that tight end role? It's similar for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just thought about that, and I was, just trying to think about other big body guys, that we've seen, that we've scouted and evaluated. DP, I'm gonna go with Connor Wegman, man. Connor Wegman, the Texas A&M overall, they had a pretty good game. They beat number 9 Missouri 41-10. Connor Wegman, completion percentage was almost 82%. He went 18 for 22. He didn't. I don't think he threw for any touchdowns, but he didn't have any interceptions. But watching the game, DP, I was impressed because this was the first time I seen Connor Wegman from that Miami performance last year, where he was throwing the ball in the middle of the field, attempting to fit it in tight windows, playing in rhythm. He looked healthy, and maybe that was a big reason. The problem with the beginning of the season, he looked healthy and he looked comfortable, DP. So I'm going Connor Wegman because obviously if he can continue to do this. It's crazy how we're halfway through the season and his quarterback situation is still up in the air, right? Like we have no idea where people are going to land. I mean, he can elevate himself right into potentially a second round because we know what we've seen over the summer, right? Like you just had that one sample size of the Miami game, and he did that really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing. Then this is the other thing. I think Texas A&M might have one loss on the season, I believe. In a big time win already, and I think they were ranked number 25. So if they continue to stack wins, right, and get this thing going, that you're talking about, hey, being a quarterback of a top team, right, in the SEC, that your draft stock can quickly explode and go. So I think he definitely made himself some money. And then I'm gonna highlight quarterback from Washington, Will Rogers, right? Upset Michigan at home. He went 21-31, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, DP. And if I'm him, I'm just simply saying this, like, look, I'm Brock Purdy, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm Brock Purdy in elevating my draft stock. I think right now on the season, he's 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. So he's been protecting the football and taking calculated risks.
No, he's very, very smart with the football. And that was something you always kind of really paid attention to. Granted, when you're playing at Mississippi State, you're playing in that air raid, so you're not running the ball half near at all. And you're throwing it pretty much the entire game. So he was put like a lot more exposure. But yeah, the Brock Purdy. Even remember last year when Joe Burrow went down, and you had Jake Browning step in Cincinnati, right? He kind of reminds me of that type of quarterback. That hey, if you put him in an insulated situation where there's talent around him, can he get the job? And it's like, yeah, like he's playing good ball. And even going back to Connor Wegman real quick, Keith, like you said, and it's crazy because first of all, statistically, like in that game, he was 18-22, 276 yards passing, so almost 300 yards passing. They were in rhythm. Like he looked so confident, like looked like a total different player from week 1 when they played Notre Dame, right? And I think looking at their schedule real quick, you got you go to Mississippi State next week. I believe it's next week. Not this Saturday, but the following. And then you host LSU. LSU has to come to you. You go to South Carolina on November 2nd. You got New Mexico State. You go to Auburn on the 23rd, and then you host Texas after Thanksgiving. Like, so that's a situation for you. If you can somewhat run this table, right, and get to Texas, and let's say Texas is undefeated, like, yeah, that's an opportunity for you to stamp yourself, especially after watching like Bama and that Vanderbilt game, and like it was just upset Saturday, like this past week 6. It was upset Saturday.
We didn't even talk about how close Miami was, right? To they did everything but lose, right?
Exactly. No, 100%.
They lost the whole game except for the last seconds.
25-point deficit, and they scored 21 in the fourth quarter. Like it was just that was insane. I actually fell asleep. Woke up at like 1 o'clock or whatever. Yeah. And I saw the game was on. I was like, this must be a replay. And I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot that game kicked off super late. Yeah, I just stayed up and watched the rest of it.
9:30 Eastern time, something like that.
10:30 Eastern time. That's why I fell asleep on it. I was like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? But yeah, like 100%. It was upset Saturday. But for me, another moneymaker, Jordan James, running back from Oregon, man.
Oh, yeah, he told me rock. He is totally rock.
And Keith, we talked about this. We said it like, all right, Oregon, you need to figure out your identity right now before you go into what? You go into next
week is Ohio State.
Next week, Ohio State, the 12th, right? You don't want to go into that next game against Ohio State at night, going into the shoe and thinking, okay, we don't know what we're doing. You know what I mean? So watching him, they back-to-back weeks, Keith, 20 and 24 carries, over 100 yards. And against Michigan State, 24 carries, 166 yards on 1 rushing touchdown. I want to see them get him more involved in the passing game as well, because he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a densely built running back that's playing good ball, man. And I like what they're doing right now. And it's like, okay, Because I'm gonna be honest with you, Keith, real quick, you know what comes up has to come down, especially for Oregon. My bag fumbler is their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel threw two red zone interceptions in this game, Keith. And I think for him, though, he was 20 of 32, 257. He had two passing touchdowns. Then he had the two interceptions. And like I said, they were red zone drive throws. One was him like moving to his right. I know it's the weak side. You know, he's a left-handed quarterback moving to his right, and he's trying to throw an out route, kind of right at the goal line or to the pylon, and the DB jumps it. But it's like, if you have enough arm talent there, you could fit that in there. DB, like even with the jump, like you expect the DB, just quarterbacks with better arms. You're like, yeah, you're not gonna get this pass, not get to this pass. The other one, he was rolling to his left. The first one, he's rolling to his left. Dude kind of crossed his body a little bit almost, and he had I think it was a tight end, a receiver coming to meet the ball, and then some defender from like the pylon or the corner undercuts it and jumps it. And I was just like, yeah, man. So like for him, like he's not playing. And again, you have Evan Stewart, you have Terrence Ferguson, you have Tez Johnson, and you're only able to really get the ball to one guy. If Oregon doesn't win the Big Ten, or if they're not as successful as they expect it to be, I think it's going to end up falling on the shoulders of Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to kind of, I guess, pay attention to, right, and kind of understand and figure out as that moves forward. Like I said, they have a big showdown with Ohio State coming up this week. DP, it's time to make an appearance, right, a guest appearance. Coach DP, Coach K is hopping in the locker room, and we're handing out the game ball. And DP, I'm gonna just go ahead and say this: I'm gonna need a really big game ball, DP. For who I'm giving this game ball to. I need a really big game ball. So coming up next, man, you're gonna get appearances from Coach K, Coach DP.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. And when you think about placing bets, guys, Super Bowl odds, outright betting odds are live right now on FanDuel Sportsbook. Get in on the action, guys. So you think about the Detroit Lions being plus 1,100, the Houston Texans plus 1,300, the Minnesota Vikings plus 1,300 to make the Super Bowl. Guys, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. All you need to do is go to FanDuel.com and get started on the action. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our every day. As Keith, you said, Coach K, Coach DP heading into the locker room, you said you're going to need a really big game ball. That worries me a little bit when you say things like that. Who gets the game ball and how big is this person?
DP, it's not even how big. I am giving the game ball to the entire Vanderbilt program, the entire program, DP. That's what I'm giving it to. I think this was their first win. I'm y'all know I'm not a stats guy, right? I'm not a stats guy, but I think I seen this. I think I seen this one, DP. First win versus a top 5 or a top 10 opponent, maybe in program history. The history of Vanderbilt, the first win. You get the game ball. You get the game ball, and it goes all the way from DP. It's not just the players. It's not just the coaching staff. It's the water guys, right? It's the equipment managers. It's the video people. I'm giving it to the security guards, right, that made sure everything was good. I'm giving it to the video board people, DP, that are playing the highlights. I'm giving it to the people in the parking lot, the people that tailgate. Everybody in Nashville gets a game ball because whenever you do something for the first time, you have to give it to them. And then I seen clips after. I think they took the goalpost and brought it down. I think like the main
25 miles or something crazy like that.
Yeah, it was something crazy like that, and then threw it in the river. You get the game ball, DP. You do something that's never done before in that fashion. And you know what I seen? I seen them storm the field. And I'm not even one of those old grandpa people, but you felt like with everybody storming the field now, that was a reason to storm the field, right? Like that seemed like a moment, like that's why you storm the field. So yeah, definitely you have to give it to them. And that offense, right? I think the quarterback name was Diego. I think the tight end, Eli Stowers, I believe. Then the running game, right, was still played and showed really well too. And just to keep going, right? Like you thought when I think they scored, and then what it was like the very next play or something, Jalen Milroe throws it to Ryan Williams, and it's like, oh, here we go again, right? Same thing that happened to Georgia. But they responded again. They just said, okay, cool, right? Put the helmet on, buckle the chin strap, let's go to work again. And to just not care that this is this Bama defense. And I think I tweeted this out when Bama played Georgia, right? I said that, hey, it looks like the quarterbacks don't really care about the secondary. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to take shots. And you can tell that Vanderbilt, in a sense, was like, you know what? This defense going to have to show us that they're good, right? And we're going to scheme some things up and just keep rolling. And that's what they did. So I have to give a game ball out to the entire Vanderbilt community, right? If you're a Vanderbilt fan, if you feel like you're a Commodore fan, you get a game ball.
No, they earned that, man. Like you said, Keith, if anybody deserved to storm the field, take the goalpost, throw it in the ocean, the lake, the river, or whatever body of water is near them, they earned that. Because, like you said, that watching that game, when that Ryan Williams play happened, I said, yeah, okay. You know what I mean?
They're going to walk out of here. They're going to walk out of here with the win, right? That's how you feel.
They're going to
figure
100%.
it out. You know?
And their offense gave Bama defense so much problems because it made them play sound, instinctive football, right? I think it was like the triple option, either like pistol and you got motion and a lot of eye candy and window dressing. And it's like, yeah, we're going to hold the mesh point. And then the quarterback, Diego Pavia, had, he threw 16 of 20, 252 passing, two passing touchdowns. He also tacked on 20 carries, 56 yards. The running back was 21 for 64 and 2 rushing touchdowns. Their defense was able to get a timely strip sack on Jalen Milroe. To give themselves the ball back. They just played like a team that wanted it more. And what Nick Saban said on game day, don't eat the rat poison. Don't listen. Don't read the tabloids and the clippings of what people said about you after beating Georgia. You got to go out here and still play a game. And shout out to Vanderbilt, Keith. I'm gonna go. My game ball's a little smaller. My game ball's a little smaller, brother. But I'm going to Darius Taylor, running back from Minnesota. Keith, 30 total touches. He rushed for 144 yards on the ground. He added, so he had 25 carries, 144 rush yards. He also caught the ball 5 times for 56 yards. He didn't have a touchdown in this game, but man, just the way he played in this game, Keith, like you talk about MVP, game ball type of performance, 6 foot, 215. And I believe he is he's only a sophomore. So we gotta wait for next year, guys, which is fine. This running back class is loaded enough. We don't need any more. But this young man, and I remember, watching tape on Minnesota, watching Ariante Ursery over the summer, and I just remember watching this young man, and I was like, man, like who is that? And I looked and I was like, oh, he's a freshman. Like that sucks. Like, I was like, man, I wanted to do a write-up on him, but he's talented. He got the job done. And then a game where you knock off number 11 USC, and your quarterback, Max Brosman, 15 of 19, 169 yards. Max Brosman had that what's they call it in the tush push in Philly or whatever. Max Brosman didn't throw for a touchdown, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns from the goal line. Like, you know what I mean? So like the running back got you there. So I got to give love to my running back, man. Darius Taylor definitely deserved the game ball.
I like that, DP. And it's just one of those classic, like, I guess Big Ten-ish type games, right? We're going to play some defense, run game. If we see the trenches are working, we're going to just keep going back to it, right? And that's what they did.
They picked Miller Moss off like twice.
Twice. Yeah, I think he threw 2 interceptions in that game. So we'll see. And that's kind of the conversation that we was going to see with USC, right? Like how they're going to navigate the physicality or the different style of football, right? That appears in the Big Ten versus, what they had last year in the Pac-12. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated. Listen, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Stop for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's show, guys, we have biggest takeaways from week 6 for the 2025 NFL Draft, but also those kind of perfect fits, perfect pairings. What 2025 prospects would fit with the right team? We're going to talk about all that and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.